Hello, this is Angela Gartner, editor at Northeast Ohio Parent Magazine, and welcome to Summer Safety Talks. We are here today with Heather Trnka, the Injury and Prevention Supervisor at Akron Children's Hospital. We are also here with Dr. Susan Myers, pediatrician at Akron Children's Hospital. And today we're going to talk about summer safety and summer travel safety. Welcome. Thank you for being here today.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
Well, the first question I wanted to ask is, everyone's going to be traveling this summer. And, I want to ask what kind of ways that parents can, prepare to be safe during their travels. Dr. Myers, why don't we start with you?
I think one of the biggest things in planning your travels is planning ahead, thinking about where are you going. Is it going to be where there's a lot of people and a lot of interaction, or is it going to be somewhere more remote? You're going camping, you're going to be by the water, just where are you going to be? And then what do you need to keep in mind to keep them safe? I think we're going to talk about a lot of different safety things, but one of the things I want to start with is just like basically reminding your children about washing their hands, about being careful what they touch, being careful what they eat, all of those different things. Another area is making sure you know where your kids are at all times. If you're going to be in a big crowded area, if you're going to go to an amusement park and there's going to be a lot of people there, you might want to, if you have multiple young children, you might want to dress them in something bright, like all the same colors, so you can easily identify where they are. I mean, that's important, knowing where your kids are at all times. And then we can get into things regarding if there's water nearby, making sure that they're not alone, that there's no way that they can get to the water and the parent doesn't know where they are or whatnot, making sure they understand that they need to be careful near water. They don't go near the water if there's not a grown-up nearby. Things like that. Certainly there's lots of things that we can keep in mind. There's so many things that we could touch on, but those are just a few things that come off the top of my head at the moment for general safety.
Heather, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, I think to kind of spur off of what Dr. Meyer said is, be prepared for the unpreparable. So have bug spray, have sunscreen, have all the safety equipment that you could potentially need, that you could expect to use on a vacation, whether it's at the beach, making sure we have our flotation devices and our sunscreen. And then if we're camping, making sure we've got our bug spray, flashlights, things of those natures that make sure that we can have not only a fun time, but a safe time too.
I mean, what should go in the safety kit in the car nowadays? Is there something that you guys recommend? Obviously Band-Aids and stuff, but is there anything that when you're traveling long distance that you should have in the car to make sure that just in case somebody gets hurt or sick? Dr. Myers?
Yeah, I think there are some basic things that you should have, as far as, like you just said, Band-Aids, some sort of antibiotic ointment for cuts and abrasions, something to clean it with. If you're out and about, you may not have, you might be on the road, you might stop at a park. You might not have access to other things except what you can carry. So some wipes, maybe some alcohol wipes, some other types of wipes just to clean things up if you have a wound. Other things to think about, we never know when our kids are going to get sick. You plan all this vacation and you're planning for a good time and you know where you're going and you have all these activities planned, and then all of a sudden your child gets sick. They're not feeling well. They're sick to their stomach. They're having a fever, so all of those, when you think of basic first aid, it might include Band-Aids and antibiotic ointment, but maybe it needs to include some Tylenol for fevers or pain or discomfort. It might need to include a thermometer if they're sick and you're going to report to a healthcare provider or whatnot, you might want to check their temperature. Think about things for rashes. Kids get into different things. Maybe they get into a little poison ivy, or they get exposed to something they're not usually exposed to. They might need maybe a hydrocortisone ointment to help with the itching. They might need maybe take some Benadryl. Benadryl will help with itching as well. Yeah, these are some basic things that you can have on hand. An upset stomach. What do you do if they have an upset stomach? They've eaten something. You're out and about. You're being exposed to all kinds of things you're not normally exposed to. So maybe something doesn't sit well, and you could try something like a little Pepto-Bismol or a little Tums, Rolaids kind of thing to help settle their stomach. Think about if they do get some sunburn. We already talked about if you're at the beach or whatnot, you might want to have, you absolutely should have some sunscreen, a little sun hat to protect them. But what if they get a little bit of a sunburn? Well, you can use there's different cooling creams or gels that you can buy over the counter that will help just to soothe them, soothe their skin. So there's things that way that you can make sure that you pack. I think another thing to be aware of, again, is where are you going? What is available? If everything under the sun is available where you're going to be, you don't need to pack as many of the extras maybe. But if you're somewhere where you're not around a lot of stores or resources, then you need to have more things on hand.
So what if your kids do get sick and need to seek some outside assistance? Should parents prepare to make sure just in case?
Absolutely. Planning ahead, I think, is key for any trip, right? So make sure before you go. I know through Akron Children's, if you have a problem and you need to talk to a nurse, you can either call your primary care's office, or if it's after hours, you can call the after hours nurse line, and they can give you some advice. Now that works well if you're in the state of Ohio. It gets a little tricky if you cross over state lines, but they can give you advice. They might be able to schedule an e-visit. We have that capability within our system, or a telehealth visit. I mean, there are options that way. So you just need to explore that, maybe write down some numbers so you have the information. The other thing is that we have Google. We can figure out where things are no matter where we're going, right? So it would be good to just take a few extra minutes and know where you are staying, what is the closest place that you can get help. If you need something more emergent, where are you going to go? You can find out where the nearest hospital is, or where the nearest urgent care center is. There's going to be lots of opportunities out there, but if you map that out before you go, that will be really helpful if you need it, and it helps everybody sort of stay calm and sort of know what to expect and how to prepare. So, yep, just a few extra minutes preparation before you go is a great idea.
Well, Heather, this question is for you. The bug season has begun. So can you talk about, and there's bugs when you travel, there's bugs at home. So what do we expect this bug season, and how can we help really squash it, hopefully?
Yes. Funny, squash it. So we are expecting a pretty bad bug season this year, especially mosquitoes and ticks. We've had a mild spring, some really warm days, and so we're expecting to see more bugs than normal. And so we always want to encourage the use of bug spray, DEET for those kiddos who can move, but also keep in mind that if we are using bug spray, we also need to make sure that we're showering that bug spray off. That we're not going to bed, unless you're camping, we're not going to bed with that bug spray on. So it's great to use, but it's also important, especially if it's a DEET-based bug spray, which will prevent the ticks from biting. We want to make sure that we're cleaning that off. And so one other tip I always keep in mind is if you have a tick, we want to make sure we get that removed as soon as possible. So in my travel kit, I have a pair of tick removal tweezers that I keep in the car for the occasion that tick does attach itself. We do want to pay attention to that area. And if it's showing some signs like that target sign. We want to make sure we're reaching out to our friends, our pediatrician, and getting in to see. Dr. Brown, do you want to add anything about tick care?
Yeah, that there's a lot of different devices out there too, and I actually have one right here.
Perfect.
Maybe. Yeah. This is one. I mean, there's lots of different ones out there, but this is an example of one. I've not used it personally, but I heard that it works amazingly well. So, yeah, the important thing is getting it off there as soon as possible. If you do think that you may have missed it, kind of the key timeline is that you want to make sure that it has not been on for more than 36 hours.
Okay.
Okay. So if you find it, you were in the woods doing whatever, and you think maybe you missed it, and now the next day, whatever, you see it, get it off as soon as possible. But if you think it's been longer than 36 hours, then you need to get medical attention because they should be treated with an antibiotic to prevent them from getting Lyme disease. So, yes.
Okay, well, that is great information. Now another thing about summer is the heat. So definitely it's going to get hot eventually. So actually it already started a little earlier this year. So, and whether they're traveling in the car or outside the car, can you talk a little bit about like how the heat impacts kids and how we can help from infants to even teens, stay cool? Dr. Myers, why don't you start?
Well, fortunately, most of our vehicles these days have air conditioning, so that's very helpful. But just making sure, so whether you're in the car and then too when you're out and about, we get busy, we're having fun. It's easy to forget that you're not drinking as much as you should. I mean, drink, 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 drink. I mean, your kids should be needing to go to the bathroom, like every 6 to 8 hours minimum. They should need to go to the bathroom. If they're not needing to go to the bathroom, they're probably not drinking enough water. And remembering too that, it's you get in a deficit because you're not drinking enough, but also because, I mean, obviously we talked about the heat itself, but when you're out in that sun, you just don't, I just think we don't appreciate how much it's, kind of adding to the dehydration. And even when when you're on the beach and you're playing and you're in and out of the water, that's still not the same as drinking enough water, but you might not feel thirsty. You get in the water and you feel cool, but you still need to be drinking. So, okay. So again, especially with the younger kids where you're monitoring, you're changing wet diapers and you're helping them with bathrooming, you're more aware of if they're going at least, going to the bathroom at least every 6 to 8 hours. You might need to ask your older kids. They may not tell you, but drink, drink, drink.
Anything to add, Heather?
Yeah, when we talk about kids in hot weather, I always go to kids left in hot cars. We lose about 36 kids annually across the United States being left in a hot car. It is tragic. It happens to all families of all socioeconomic statuses. It's something that is, we've been trying to run campaigns to remind folks about not leaving kids in the car. We are such a distracted society that it's very easy to do. And so whatever you need to do to remind yourself that there's a baby in the back, whether that's leaving your purse, your cell phone, whatever you need to do to remind yourself that the baby's in the back seat, we recommend doing. And so, but as well, a lot of folks say, well, I left my car running. We see, especially in Northeast Ohio, more cars being broken into and stolen with children in the back seat than we see children who die in hot cars. And so not even for a minute do we leave our kiddos in the car, whether it's running or it's not. It's dangerous and it can lead to really tragic circumstances.
Yeah, I mean, that's a really good point. And, just circling real quick back on the hydration, I know I'm not one to always drink enough water myself. And, I'm always thinking like about sugar and not, giving my kids sugary drinks. Is there other ways that we can help our kids hydrate with in addition to water? What do you think, Dr. Myers?
Yeah, I think you could lean towards, you know, think about what else do you take in the car as far as you take drinks and you oftentimes take snacks. So a few salty snacks actually make you thirsty and will encourage children to drink more. So that's one way that you can kind of help. They don't know you're helping them, but you are. The other thing would be being careful how you store it, but different fruits that have high water content. Watermelon, I mean, would be a perfect example because the water content is so high and it's good and it's yummy and the kids like it. So you know that you're getting some extra fluids in that way. Staying away from, you know, all of the starchy kinds of snacks, but sticking with some more of the like fruits and vegetables and high water content type snacks would be very helpful with that too.
Well, and talking about the, the water, a different kind of water is the beach and going to the water this summer. And Heather, can you talk a little bit about like sand safety? Definitely, whether it's like hot sand or and stuff like that. So can you talk a little bit about making sure kids are safe in the sand this summer?
Yeah, so we want to make sure we're having a good time at the beach and taking part in building sandcastles and digging moats and doing all those fun things are important. We want to always make sure that we're testing the temperature of the sand because sand can vary greatly from the shade to the sun and can cause burns. And so we want to make sure that the sand is cool, especially before we set our little ones down who might not be able to regulate that temperature as well. We want to make sure the sand's nice and cool for them, that they're shaded. There's other, we want to make sure our kids aren't eating the sand, that it's clean as well. Take a look around, make sure there aren't dirty diapers nearby or all of those icky things that we can run into, but making sure that it's as clean as possible, making sure they're not eating it, and then making sure that we're having a good time. And I think that's part of it as parents. We need to get down and build the sandcastle with them, and have that fun that builds those memories.
Well, and it's not just the sand, but it's also the water. So, a lot of kids, a lot of kids are going to be going not just to the lake, but they also might be traveling somewhere to the ocean or the pool. Can you talk a little bit about, water safety and what you talked about flotation devices earlier? What really device is kind of safe for that parents, not all devices, obviously watching your kid is probably the safest, but can you talk a little bit about water safety and flotation devices?
Yeah. So drowning is a leading cause of death for 1 to 4 year olds. And so we really need to pay attention to that population. We talk a lot about being a water watcher and not being distracted. So anytime our kids are in or near water, that we're not on our cell phones, we're not reading a book, we're not, chatting with friends, making sure that our eyes are on the water. Pools and lakes and the ocean are not all treated the same. There are different types of safety precautions that need to come into play. We talk about lakes and oceans and creeks, and those open bodies of water. There's real danger that can come from there. We're not sure of the depth. There could be vegetation. There could be a riptide or an undercurrent. There could just be a really fast current in a creek. And so those are the things that we need to pay attention to, but not just for our little kids. When we talk about open water, our 14 to 18-year-olds are about 50% of the fatalities that happen in open water. So before we let those teenagers go out and paddleboard with friends or get in that kayak or do whatever those water safety or those water fun activities are, we want to make sure that we're having that safety conversation with them, that they need to have a life preserver on. They need to have a life vest on. Those are important pieces of the puzzle when we talk about water safety and the layers of protection. And then for our little guys, we need to make sure they're an appropriate, a Coast Guard approved life vest. There's been a lot of talk recently about puddle jumpers and how it can kind of give our kids a false sense of security that they can swim. And so if you're choosing to use a puddle jumper, those are Coast Guard approved. I would just really encourage you to still make sure you're having as much attention on the water as possible. For our little kids, those who can't swim independently, we want to make sure they're not more than an arm's length away, that we're in the water with them, making sure that they are safe, still having a good time, but they are as protected as possible.
How important it is for parents to learn CPR and making sure to have those that safety that skill.
For, as part of that's part of the layers of that water safety is making sure you know CPR, and not just water safety, really any occasion. It's so important for parents to learn CPR and first aid skills. Those are lifetime skills. You will never be disappointed that you learned those skills. You know, drowning happens so quickly. And we often tell folks that if you have a child that's missing and there's water nearby, we want you to check the water first. If the child is in the water, to pull them out, to be able to assess whether or not they're breathing, and to start rescue breathing and CPR if necessary. Dr. Myers, do you have anything to add?
Oh, I completely agree. As far as learning that skill and knowing what to do and refreshing on it too. Sometimes you think, oh, well, I took that course. Yeah, but you took it 2 years ago and thankfully, you've never had to use it. But it really needs to be something that you're continually refreshing on. In the heat of the moment when something happens, you want to make sure that information, that knowledge of what to do is right there. And so you're only going to keep that if you keep going over it, reviewing it so that you feel confident.
And to
Yeah.
Dr. Myers' point, like when we talk about drowning, drowning doesn't look like what it looks like on television. There's not splashing, there's not yelling. The children are usually just bobbing right at the surface, coming up and going back under. It looks very different. It's very silent. And so learning those skills of CPR, knowing that once a child is underwater, if we can get them out of the water as soon as possible and assess and start CPR as soon as possible.
And it's not just at when you're away from home as well. You know, is what about like how little of water really can kids can drown in?
Unfortunately, we've seen children drown in toilets, drown in buckets, drown in kiddie pools with a couple inches of water. It does not take very much water, especially for our under 4 group, to drown. And so we want to make sure at home, if we've got buckets, if we've got kiddie pools, we're dumping that water out when we're done playing. We're not keeping the water table full of water. We're keeping toilet seats down and bathroom doors closed. Those are all important prevention pieces when we talk about water safety at home.
And I guess my last question is about now, as parents, we really try to, watch our kids, but sometimes they may get separated, and hopefully that never happens to any of us. But how do we, just in case something happens, how do we kind of help our kids prepare and especially if we're in a big park, a big amusement park, that kind of thing? How do you help what advice do you have for parents to help them prepare if they do get separated?
So we have a wonderful smartphone. And so one thing we always recommend is before you leave the car, stand and take a full picture of your child so you know exactly what they're wearing. Dr. Myers talked a little bit before is if you've got multiple kids, dress them in the same bright color, dress them in the same outfit, but snap that picture so you have a picture of today so that when we go to law enforcement or safety forces, we can say, this is what my child looks like today. The other important things is we want kids to know their whole name. So if we call our little guy Buddy Sue, we want to make sure that he knows his name is actual Michael and what's his last name and what's mom and dad's name. And if they're old enough, making sure that we know at least one phone number that we can call a trusted adult with. So, for my son, we learned our full name and learned mom's cell phone number. And so we know that they can express that. If they're little, you can write phone numbers and use a sticky Band-Aid over top of it, a clear Band-Aid paste over top of it so it doesn't wipe off. So you can put your phone number on your child if you're really concerned. If you're going to be in a large crowd, there's potential for separation. But really what's most important is keeping our eyes. But we all know it happens so fast. a turn of the head and they're gone. And so making sure that we have those pictures, they know their information is really important. And then they know who the trusted adults are. If they get separated from mom and dad, who can they go to? What's a police officer look like, or an employee with a name badge on? So those are all conversations we need to have with our kiddos before we go to those big fun events.
Mm-hmm.
And with kids, they're so independent. And, as far as in the older, and sometimes they're out biking and doing things. So is there any final tips about making sure kids are safe when they're on the road with their bikes, or hopefully not on the road, but on the sidewalk with their bikes, making sure that they're, doing, because, as someone who's grew up like, in the 90s, our parents didn't do bike helmets, but now, I think there's now more of a push for kids to wear helmets. So can you talk just briefly about that for us?
Yeah. So the one thing I always say is bicycle helmets are one of the cheapest ways to prevent injuries. Bike helmets are so important, and we really are working to make bicycles as important as seatbelts. So you don't get in the car and don't put your seatbelt on. You shouldn't get on the bike and not put your bike helmet on. And when you get on the bike and don't have your helmet on, it should feel weird. And so reminding all ages that they need bicycle helmets. We see a huge drop off around 8 to 10 of not wearing bicycle helmets, and that goes all the way up to adulthood. We know that if parents wear bike helmets, kids are about 90% more likely to wear a bike helmet if their parents wear a bike helmet. And so modeling that good behavior. When we talk about bicycle safety, riding on the sidewalks until they're 13, kids can't judge the speed of a vehicle until ages 10 to 13. They don't have that capacity to go, oh, that car's moving really fast, or that car's moving slow, I can get across the street in time. Making sure they're following traffic rules, that we're getting off our bike and pushing it across the street, not crossing mid-block, not riding in between vehicles. Those are all the really important safety features, but also letting folks know where we're going, how long we're going to be, and when we're going to be back. And so especially for our tweens who are really wanting that independence, if they're riding to their friend's house, that we're calling mom when we get there and letting them know that they arrived safely.
Anything to add, Dr. Myers?
I have additional thought that I wanted to share that doesn't have to go along with bikes, but just kind of going back to thinking about when your kids are unwell and thinking about when we're traveling, we're all excited and we're thinking about where we're going and all these new places and fun things to do and to see. But for some children, that's going to be overwhelming. So just keeping in mind that to take some things along that will be familiar. Maybe while you're traveling, you're sleeping in a different bed, and maybe you're sleeping in a different bed every night because, you're going places and on and on. But having some things that sort of represent some security for them, a favorite toy, their favorite blanket, just some things that will help them to feel more comfortable so they can have fun with the family as a whole. And just remembering that when they're sick, they want you and they want to know that everything's okay and that you have things under control. You now have your whole safety repertoire with you, and they can feel confident that mom and dad got this. They're taking care of us no matter what happens. They're going to take care of things, and we're all going to be okay. And we're going to have a blast, and we're going to make amazing memories that we can hang on to for years to come.
Well, this has been so wonderful. I want to thank the two of you for coming and sharing all this great information with us. How can people learn more about Akron Children's and the safety tips?
We have wonderful information on our website at akronchildrens.org, as well as finding a local pediatrician. So check us out on the web.
And for more information about Northeast Ohio Parent, visit northeastohioparent.com. Thank you. Thank you for all the information. Have a great day.